Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Sorcerer Shadow Volume 2 and Sorcery Self-Defense, we are going to be talking about blood magic. Now in the last episode we talked about how to protect your blood and how to keep people from using your blood or other DNA links to cast spells upon you. Now we're going to talk about how to use your DNA links, such as blood, to work, spell work. Okay, so we have talked about blood magic in the past, and mostly we've talked about using it with sigil work, and we're going to talk about that as well. But we're also going to discuss some other uses for it, what it is that is actually going on there, how to make it work, what are some of the reasons to use it, and what are some of the reasons not to use it, or at least not to use it often. And then we'll talk about how using sigil work with blood magic or other blood magic work where it's operating within the veil is a little different than using sigil work when it comes from the astral plane, like how we normally charge it with the chi. That is very much an energetic charge, even though, of course, that energy is within the veil because it's coming through us and it's partially materialistic. Blood is much more material than chi, yeah? I think we can all agree on that. Anyways, so, what is blood magic? Like I say in the last video we've talked about blood magic, we are not going to be talking about using blood magic that has come from any other source besides yourself. There is lots of spells that work with that, but we're not going to be talking about that. That's not the type of information I want to be giving out publicly on a channel. There are ethical ways to do even that. But, like I said, we're not going to talk about that here. I need to know a person privately before I'm willing to discuss any of the other ways to do that kind of thing, because there are many ways to misuse that sort of magic. Anyways, so blood magic, of course, is magic that is operating by using your blood to charge whatever spell it is that you are working with, or using it as the vessel. Typically, we use blood as the charge. Now, when we do this, it can be as simple as we did in the last video, where you draw a sigil, prick yourself, and then use the blood to charge the sigil. We did that with our personal sigil in the last episode, and how I explained how that can be used to protect your blood and your DNA links. And we can do this with any sigil. When we get to the charging stage, you still draw the sigil with intent, but when you get to the charging stage, whether you're going to contain or release the sigil, rather than focusing energy in, which you could have still done during the drawing session. You can still do the mana, chi, while you're drawing the sigil with your intent. Pump the energy in as you're drawing. That's the best way to be drawing the sigil anyways. But then after that, we do essentially a secondary charge by pricking your finger and adding the blood to the sigil. And then it can be contained, like the sigil that we did last week, or released in whichever manner that you find necessary for the sigil that you're working with, depending on what you're doing. Okay, so, a few things about this. The energy, yes, it's in the blood, but the blood is mostly the vessel for that energy. So you can't really store blood to be used at a later date, because it is that release of it from your flesh as the blood comes out, and kind of the pain involved that help create that charge, that link. Yeah? And that, when we're using sigil work, we can do it that way, or we can actually draw the blood beforehand and draw it out with the blood, and actually draw the sigil in blood. I typically don't use this method, even though it sounds much more aesthetic, and with a lot of aesthetics there's a lot of flow there. But the energy itself doesn't flow, because you pricked your finger a few moments before you drew the sigil. That energy has been released. Now yes, it can be contained into the writing instrument and then immediately drawn, but the longer you wait between the pricking and the drawing, the less potent that sigil is going to be. Because it's not the blood itself. It is the energy within the blood. The blood is the vessel for the power that we seek. The blood is not the life. The blood is the vessel of the life. And that is one of the key secrets that, well, Hollywood often forgets when you see blood magic mentioned in movies. You really think the blood is the life in so many different movies. No, blood is the vessel of the life. Okay, so what other uses are there for this sort of thing? Well, remember last week how we talked about you can connect to your hair or your blood and work your will through that if someone already has it? Well, same difference if you leave that blood or hair somewhere. It can be an extremely powerful ward simply to prick your finger and leave your blood in a spot with an intent. You have left a bit of yourself there. That is you. You have left yourself connected to that place. So whatever will you put there has a very strong, powerful link. Another way to do this, especially if you're wanting to protect a person, a little more difficult for me where I don't have a lot anymore, but giving someone a lock of your hair as a ward to protect and guard them can be extremely significant. This is often done in warfare. Yeah, you hear about the soldier's fiance or wife giving them a lock of their hair to take to war with them to remind them of their wife, but that gives them the drive. That protects them. That keeps them safe. But also, the girl did it, whether she knows it or not, or the person. You know, I don't mean to gender that. These days, it could be the guy cut the hair for his husband. It doesn't matter. Those things don't matter. It works either way. If they cut their hair, give it to the person with the intent that it will keep them safe and bring them back to them. That is a very, very powerful spell. Yeah? And the same can be done with blood. In fact, there is one case where I intentionally bled on someone because I needed to get a ward on them without them knowing. And that seems a little, I admit that's a gray area. Getting your own blood on someone without letting them know you're casting on them, but it was to protect them. In fact, in this particular case, they were the last person left of that bloodline, and I had to get something on them to distract the thing that was getting rid of that bloodline. So, little immoral, I suppose, but it distracted the creature that was chasing them. They didn't look for her. I got rid of the thing. I dealt with it. Sometimes we have to be a little creative. Anyways, so we've talked about blood magic, how it works with sigilcraft, how it can work outside of sigilcraft. It is a great way to charge a servitor, give energy to a golem. There's some other bodily fluids, honestly, if you're going to make a golem or egregore using those, though there are ones that are a little funner to extract, a little less painful, that are better. So if you're going to do that, I suggest that over blood. Unless, of course, you can't make that particular fluid, which then you would use the blood from the monthly time period, from what I understand. If you can somehow isolate the egg, that would be incredible. Especially if you have a working partner to add the other end of those particular fluids. In making, well, at that point, you're talking about a golem or maybe even a homunculus. It could be an interesting idea, but we're getting, well, kind of off topic. Not where I intended to go today anyways. Okay, so, let's see. We've talked about how to use it. So, what is the reasons to use it over regular sigil magic? It tends to be much faster and much more potent. And in some ways, that's the reason not to use it. Because this magic is occurring closer to the material plane. It has more draw, but it has less to work with. So these unexpected results, these things that, you got what you wanted, but some things that happened that like, oh man, I don't know if I was willing to lose that to get this. That potential is more there with the blood magic. So you need to actually take that into consideration, and you can ward against that as you're working up to casting the sigil. Work on the things that are not allowed to be created as this manifestation occurs. Think about those things and forbid them as you design the sigil. If the blood magic, where you're pricking your finger, I don't recommend using it for like anything that far out. Like it's going to be different. If you prick your finger and bleed on something, you're wanting a very specific place to have thing to happen in that place. Typically, you're doing that for warding, to keep someone out of an area, or to keep a particular person safe. I have heard of people using it on roulette tables. Haven't tried it myself. Never had the opportunity to get away with that, but that might be an interesting experiment for the future. It's trying something like that. So, the reason to use it less often. When we do this, we are literally bleeding for what it is that we want. There's a lot of magical, raw, material power in that. But there's also the ecstatic connotation of, I bled for this. I gave blood for this. And that is extremely powerful. And like I said, it will help make the magic manifest much more quickly. Sometimes it will be less than ideal results. Like I said, the less it has to work with, the less ideal it can make the situation. And when we're using blood magic, it comes in quick. So you've got to be helping it. If you're using blood magic, make sure the situation is already prepared before you prick your finger, and then continue to work to that end after, to reduce the odds of less than ideal results while still manifesting. Because it's going to manifest in some way. If you bleed on the thing, it's going to do everything in its power to manifest. The energy is going out. It's already on the material plane. So even if you give something that has no way to manifest, it's going to try. It's going to alter things. It's going to pull as much of that potential towards you as it can. So make that a part of your consideration. But again, the more often you bleed for things, the less significance it has. So if you're going to use blood magic, there are people that like to use it all of the time. It is extremely useful, but it loses a bit of its potency that way. There's a law of diminishing returns. When you're willing to bleed for your paycheck to come a day early, it diminishes the potency when you're also willing to bleed to save your own life in a more important spell. Okay, so let's see. What haven't we covered? Things you shouldn't use it for. I strongly recommend you do not use this for anything with ill intent. Blood magic sounds ominous, but there's really, especially this type, there's not a lot of ethical complications here. But if you start using your blood with ill intent towards other people, well, you're linked to that. It's not karma, but it's connection. Yeah? If you use your blood to attack somebody, you better be very specific in how you're doing it. Like prick yourself in imagining you attacking them, not like something bad happening to them from the will of your blood. You got to be direct because you're linked to it. Yeah? And even then, as soon as you're done, do a cord cutting on that. Do a cord cutting on it. Get yourself away from that type of thing anytime you're using blood for anything malignant. I suggest you don't. Just don't do it. However, that being said, it is great on the opposite end. Wards, protection spells, few things are more potent for warding your own room and home than a small drop of your own blood placed with that intent. Anyways, I think I've covered everything. That's going to be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.